Hello friends, welcome to Historical Pulse on this channel. You will see the video about the world top in history on this channel. Your knowledge will be increase and your mind will be refresh. Let's view the video. Battles that changed the world. The Battle of Marathon, 490 BCE. The birth of Western freedom. The morning sun rose over the dusty plains of Marathon in 490 BCE. The air was tense, heavy with anticipation. Facing each other stood two vastly different worlds. The mighty Persian Empire under King Darius I, and a coalition of free Greek city-states led by Athens. It was not just a clash of armies, but a confrontation between empire and freedom, between tyranny and democracy. For years, the Persian Empire had expanded across Asia and into Europe, swallowing nations and kingdoms under its rule. But Athens, newly democratic and fiercely independent, stood as a symbol of defiance. Darius could not tolerate the small city's rebellion. His massive army, thousands of infantry, and cavalry that crossed the Aegean. See to crush Athens once and for all. The Greeks were outnumbered, barely 10,000 Athenians, and a few hundred soldiers from the small city of Plataea stood against tens of thousands of Persian warriors. Yet the Greeks possessed one great advantage: unity and strategy. Their commander, Miltiades, had studied Persian tactics and knew their weakness. He devised a plan that would become legendary in the history of warfare. As the Persians landed on the plain, they expected the Greeks to hide behind their city walls. But Miltiades did the unexpected. He ordered his men to attack first. The Greek hoplites, heavily armored infantry with long spears and shields, charged across the plain in tight formation. The Persians, light-armed and less disciplined, were stunned by this bold assault. The Greeks strengthened their wings and weakened the center, tricking the Persians into pushing forward. As the Persian center advanced, the Greek flanks closed in from both sides, trapping them in a deadly pincer movement. In just a few hours, chaos engulfed the Persian ranks. Bodies fell, shields broke, and the mighty Persian army began to crumble. When the dust settled, the battlefield was silent except for the cries of the wounded. Over 6,000 Persians lay dead, while the Greeks had lost fewer than 200 men. The Persians fled to their ships, humiliated and broken. But the story of Marathon did not end there. A Greek messenger named Pheidippides was sent to carry the news of victory to Athens. He ran nearly 26 miles without stopping. Bursting into the assembly, he shouted, "Rejoice! We have won!" and collapsed dead from exhaustion. His heroic run inspired the modern marathon race, a symbol of endurance and courage. The victory at Marathon was more than a military triumph. It was a defining moment for Western civilization. It proved that courage, unity, and freedom could defeat tyranny and oppression. Had the Persians won, democracy might have been crushed before it had a chance to flourish. In the years that followed, Greek confidence soared. Athens became the cultural and intellectual center of the ancient world, giving birth to philosophy, art, and science that still shape our world today. The Battle of Marathon was not just the defense of a city, it was the defense of an idea, that people could govern themselves, that freedom was worth fighting for. More than 2,000 years later, the spirit of Marathon continues to inspire. Every time a person stands up against oppression or runs a marathon in pursuit of personal victory, they echo that ancient cry. We have won. The Battle of Hastings, 1066. The Norman Conquest of England, in the year 1066. The winds of destiny blew across the English Channel. On one side stood Harold Godwinson, the newly crowned Anglo-Saxon King of England. On the other side, William, Duke of Normandy, claimed the English crown was his by promise and bloodline. What followed was a single, decisive battle that would forever reshape England, the Battle of Hastings. William's army landed on the southern coast of England, bringing with it an innovation that would change warfare: mounted knights. Harold, however, had already fought one battle in the north against Viking invaders and rushed his exhausted men south to meet this new threat. On October 14, 1066, the two armies faced off near the town of Hastings. The English forces formed a solid shield wall, a wall of men in shields standing shoulder to shoulder. The Normans attacked repeatedly, but the English line held firm. Hours passed and victory seemed within Harold's grasp. Then, William resorted to cunning. He ordered a feigned retreat, tricking the English into breaking formation and chasing the fleeing Normans. When the English soldiers ran downhill, the Norman cavalry turned back and struck. The shield wall shattered. As chaos spread, King Harold was struck by an arrow. Legend says it pierced his eye. With their leader dead, the English army collapsed. William's victory was complete. The Norman conquest changed England forever. Norman French mixed with Old English to create the foundation of modern English. Castles rose across the land. Feudalism took root, and England entered a new era. The Battle of Hastings was not just the fall of a king. It was the birth of a new England, one that would rise to become a global power centuries later. The Battle of Waterloo, 1815, Napoleon's final defeat after years of war and conquest. Napoleon Bonaparte, the Emperor of France, had returned from exile. Europe trembled as he rebuilt his army in one last attempt to reclaim his empire. His enemies, the British, Prussians, Austrians, and Russians, united once more to stop him. The final confrontation came on June 18, 1815, near the Belgian village of Waterloo. The battlefield was soaked with rain, turning the ground to mud, a factor that would change history. Napoleon delayed his attack, giving the Prussian army time to approach. Facing him was Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington, commanding British and Allied forces. The fighting was fierce. French cannon fire thundered. Cavalry charges broke against British squares, and villages burned. At midday, Napoleon launched his main attack, led by his elite Imperial Guard. For a moment, it seemed victory was near, but the British line held firm. Then from the east, the Prussian army under Blücher arrived, striking Napoleon's flank. Surrounded and outnumbered, the French army broke. Napoleon's dream of empire was crushed forever. He fled into exile on the remote island of St. Helena, where he would spend the rest of his life. Waterloo ended an era. It restored peace to Europe and marked the beginning of British global dominance. The name Waterloo became a symbol of ultimate defeat, but also of the courage it takes to face it. The Battle of Stalingrad, 1942-1943, the turning tide of World War III, the frozen ruins of Stalingrad. A brutal struggle unfolded between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, a battle so fierce it turned the tide of World War II. Hitler's armies had swept across Europe, and by 1942, they aimed to seize the oil fields of the Caucasus. Stalingrad, a city on the Volga River, stood in their path. To Hitler, its name, bearing that of his enemy Joseph Stalin, made it a symbol of pride. The battle began with massive German air raids that reduced the city to rubble. But the Soviet soldiers refused to surrender. Street by street, building by building, they fought with knives, grenades, and sheer determination. The Germans called it rat warfare. As winter closed in, the Soviets launched Operation Uranus, encircling over 300,000 German soldiers. Cut off from supplies and freezing, the German Sixth Army was trapped. Hitler refused to let them retreat. Starvation and frostbite claimed thousands each day. In February 1943, the German commander General Paulus surrendered. Stalingrad marked the end of Hitler's advance and the beginning of the Soviet march to Berlin. It was one of history's bloodiest battles, over 2 million casualties. Yet, from the ashes of that city, rose the hope of liberation. The Battle of Midway, 1942, the ocean clash that saved the Pacific, just 6 months after Pearl Harbor. Japan sought to crush the remaining U.S. fleet by luring it into a trap near Midway Island. But American codebreakers had deciphered Japanese plans, giving Admiral Chester Nimitz a vital advantage. On June 4, 1942, Japanese carriers launched attacks on Midway, unaware that American aircraft were already closing in. At precisely the right moment, U.S. dive bombers found the Japanese fleet and struck. In minutes, 4 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, were ablaze. Japan lost its best pilots and ships, while the U.S. lost only 1 carrier. Midway turned the tide of the Pacific War. From that moment, Japan was on the defensive, and the Allies began their long march toward victory. The Battle of Midway stands as a testament to intelligence, bravery, and timing, showing that even against overwhelming odds, knowledge and courage can win the day.